The fortunes of a house are often tied invisibly to the rise and fall of its strongest allied gangs. Each gang leader is akin to a general in the house's armies, and each victory earns the house masters much kudos from their peers as well as political capital to further their schemes. For the most part, the gangs are given autonomy to further the interests of the house, largely by the simple act of fighting in its name, and sent to places where they can do the most good, or harm, to the house's foes. Sometimes, however, the nobles of a house will choose to take a more direct hand in matters, one which gang leaders ignore at their peril. G'day and welcome back to Wellywood Wargaming. My name is Damon, and in this episode of Sump Banter, I thought it was probably about time that we got round to talking about sub-plots, what they are and how you might use them in your games of Necromunda. Now, in this episode, I am just going to talk about the universal subplots in the game. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's fine. We'll explain it very shortly. But please do like, share, subscribe, comment down below, get those algorithms popping off for me. That would be great and very much appreciated. But just a quick sort of little blurb from the rulebook here to explain what subplots are, I suppose, is probably needed first. How subplots represent the more direct meddling of the house in the activities of a gang. These side missions can be included in any of the scenarios and allow a gang to earn some extra reputation, credits, experience, or gain additional tactics cards should they complete them. Players should decide during the pre-battle sequence if they want to use house subplots, with both players needing to agree to include them. If they do, they will need a deck of playing cards. Each player shuffles the deck and draws a card without letting their opponent see it. Starting with the player with the lower gang rating, if both players have the same rating, you roll off. Then, they should consult the tables in this section to see what kind of subplot their gang has been given. If a joker card is drawn, the player should immediately show it to their opponent and draw 2 new cards without showing them to their opponent, giving them 2 subplots for the game. If one of these cards is also a joker, then repeat the process, giving the player a total of 3 subplots. Each subplot contains details of when it's revealed, how to complete it, and the rewards for doing so. Unless otherwise noted, once a card has been revealed and its effects have been resolved, it is discarded. Now, subplots offer an enormous amount of flavour and sort of extra stuff to your games. It's not just about winning the game. It's not just about sticking to the actual scenario specifics. Now you've actually got sort of side missions and side quests. You can do this through the likes of intrigues as well in the Law and Misrule campaign, and we'll probably do a video on intrigues at some point soon too. But for now, subplots, like I said, these are the universal subplots for the game, so any gang can use these, but we do also have entire lists for every single other gang in the game. So Escher have their own subplots, Van Saar have their own subplots, hell, even Genestealer cults, I believe, have their own subplots as well. And you can use those ones too. Now, I do strongly recommend you using these because they are just really, really good and add quite a bit of spice to your games as well. Just worth noting as well, you don't have to, you don't have to accept the rewards of these subplots as well. That is completely optional. And you don't have to play with them either. So if your opponent really doesn't want to play with these for some reason, then, I suppose they win out on that argument. Okay, so getting into the specific tables that we have here, of course we have 4 suits. We have hearts, diamonds, clubs and spades, and each one of those represents a different sort of theme that you can draw from. Of course you are picking these at random, so you don't really get to choose, but they're in there anyway. Dark influences, diamonds. The clan houses are not the only ones that can conscript an Underhive gang for their own agendas, and sometimes gang bosses will serve different masters, often without realizing. The rewards of these unseen patrons may appear capricious or random, but in the fires of battle are rarely unwelcome. So the subplots we get for the diamond suit here, dark influences, have quite a strong theme. In fact, all of them do. But the rewards are pretty much the same in terms of the entire suit, in that you get a random tactics card free to use in the game, should you meet the criteria of each one. Now we're just going to go through them quickly and just sort of explain what those criteria are. If you get an ace of diamonds, outlaw vendetta. Guilders aren't the only ones to put out bounties. Reveal this card at the end of any round in which 4 or more enemy fighters suffer a serious injury or are taken out of action by your gang. If these conditions are met, draw a random tactics card. So this one's pretty good. Of course, if you're in the ascendancy, you've got the upper hand in the game, and there's quite large crews, I suppose. You're quite likely to fulfill the criteria for this one, and it just gives you an extra tactics card for the game. Not too bad at all. The 2 of diamonds here, strangers in the hive. Eyes watch from the darkness, waiting for your gang to lure some prey into their grasp. Reveal this card when your gang takes an enemy fighter out of action with a melee attack who is out of line of sight and more than 12 inches from any models in their own gang. If these conditions are met, draw a random tactics card. Again, pretty cool, nice and fluffy that one, so you've got to sneak up and take one out. Perhaps a sniper that's up on a roof somewhere. This is a great one for a knacked ghoul to fulfill, perhaps. The next one, the 3 of diamonds, it's Deathly Silence. In the aftermath of a massacre, dark forces gather. Reveal this card if at least half of your opponent's crew is either seriously injured, out of action, or held off the table as reinforcements. If these conditions are met, draw a random tactics card. So very similar to the first one there. Not too much to talk about on that one. The next one, the 4 of diamonds. A weak mind is fertile ground for predatory psychers. Reveal this card when an enemy fighter fails a willpower test with a result of 10+. If these conditions are met, draw a random gang tactics card. Quite an interesting one, that one, of course. Now, it does say fails a willpower test with a result of 10+, so that's quite hard to do. So this one's quite specific, I suppose, and there really does need to be psychers in the game. I'm not sure about this one being particularly viable most of the time. However, I'm sure it will come up from time to time, but I'd feel a bit gutted getting that one in a game without psychers. The 5 of diamonds here, and this is Scrap Code. A mysterious stranger has hired the gang to plant a code in the local cogitator network. Reveal this card at the start of the game and choose 3 pieces of terrain and/or door consoles at least 6 inches from your deployment area and at least 8 inches from each other. Fighters may make the hacking double action within 1 inch of these points. If they do, make an intelligence test for them. If successful, they have planted the code. If your gang can hack all 3 locations, draw a random tactics card. So again, you get a random tactics card for this one, but it's a bit more fun and a bit more engaging in that you're not just killing people, you're actually hacking some stuff. The 6 of diamonds here is Cold Trade. An enemy fighter is unwittingly carrying an off-world object of great interest to the guilders. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters sends an enemy fighter out of action, either in melee or as part of a coup de grace action, and roll a d6, adding 1 to the result for each enemy fighter previously sent out of action in melee or coup de grace. If the result is a 6+, your gang has found the object, and you may draw a random tactics card. Those are the first 6. We're just going to get into the latter part of the diamond suit here as well. The next one is the 7 of diamonds. Keeping an enemy gang kissing the ground is a good way of letting them know their place. Reveal this card at the end of any round in which every enemy fighter on the board is prone. If these conditions are met, draw 1 random tactics card, and that's Suppression Order, the 7 of diamonds. Pretty hard to do, but if you've got the entire enemy gang pinned, if you're Van Saar perhaps, then you might want to do this more easily. That's the 7 of diamonds there. The 8 of diamonds, Official Secrets. Enforcers want some evidence on a gang leader. When one of your fighters activates within 6 inches of your opponent's leader, they may make the picked capture double action. If a model that has taken this action begins their activation in your deployment area, you can remove them from the game. They do not count as going out of action, and draw a random tactics card. Very cool, very fluffy. I like that one. Paparazzi, sort of hidden paparazzi one there. The 9 of diamonds, a little surprise. The gang has been given an opportunity to help with some urban renewal. Reveal this card at the start of the game and randomly select one of your crew to carry the bomb. The bomb carrier may make a plant bomb double action. If the bomb carrier completes this action 3 times within 6 inches of the center of the board, the bomb has been planted and you can draw a random tactics card. Should the bomb carrier go out of action before planting the bomb, work out the effects of a frag trap as if it had gone off in the center on the bomb carrier's position. So this one's interesting. I mean, it's really narratively fluffy, I suppose, but if you've got a small crew, this is basically taking one of your fighters out of the game just to gain an extra tactics card, perhaps, if you do it. Pretty not a great risk and reward scenario, I suppose, there. The next one is the payoff, and this is the 10 of diamonds. Credits often work as well as bullets to change someone's mind. For this battle, your fighters can make the bribe basic action if they're in base contact with an enemy ganger or juve, though not the leader or champion. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters makes this action. When an enemy is bribed, they must make a willpower test. If successful, the action has no effect. Otherwise, the enemy gang receives D3 times 10 credits, and the bribed ganger is removed from the board. They do not count as being taken out of action. As soon as the enemy has been successfully bribed, discard this card and draw another gang tactics card. This one's probably my favourite so far. but very situational. You'd have to be in base-to-base contact with someone, but this would be hilarious if you somehow had a cord or bone picker in close combat with a Goliath leader, for example, and you bribed them off the table. Very fun indeed. I like that one a lot. And the enemy sort of gets credits for it as well, which is quite cool. The Jack of Diamonds here, Gilder Packet. Gilders like to use gangers as couriers in the Underhive because they don't ask too many questions. Reveal this card at the start of the game and then randomly select one of your crew to be the courier. At the end of any round, if the courier is in the enemy's deployment area, you can discard this card and remove the courier from the board. They do not count as going out of action, and you get to draw a random tactics card. Again, I would rather have the fighter on the board than the tactics card 9 times out of 10, but if you've got a really big crew or a free juve or something, then this one's probably quite good. Now, we've got the Queen of Diamonds, Dark Offering. Dark powers demand their due. Reveal this card at the start of the game and choose a point on the board at least 12 inches from your deployment area. If at any time there are 3 or more seriously injured fighters within 6 inches of the chosen point, discard this card and draw a random tactics card. Not bad. Again, quite highly situational there, but you really do have to sort of pick a good sort of spot, usually the center, I suppose, where most of the action is going to happen. For the chances of this to come off more often. And the last one, the King of Diamonds here, Bad Blood. A strange infection has taken root in one of your fighters that compels them to spread their tainted blood. Reveal this card at the start of the game and randomly choose one of your fighters in your crew. If this fighter is out of action with a melee weapon, draw a random gang tactics card. If the chosen fighter was a champion or leader, you may choose a gang tactics card instead. You get to choose one instead of being random. That's pretty cool. All of the rest of them are random here. This is the only one that you actually get to choose. So that was the diamonds. We're going to get straight into some of the other ones now. Spades, industrial sabotage. Gangs are often ordered to attack the infrastructure of rival houses, there being no swifter way to force a house out of favour than to bring down their production output. Okay, so here we have the Spades suit here. The first one, the Ace of Spades. The Ace of Spades is spud wrenching. Attacks against machinery are a quick way for a house to hurt rivals, and many of the ancient technologies of Necromunda are completely irreplaceable. A fighter in your opponent's deployment zone may make the spud wrenching double action. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters makes this action. Each time this action is successfully made, make a note. If one of your fighters completes 3 spud-wrenching actions in a row, they have destroyed something vital to the opposing house, and your gang gains D3+1 reputation. Not bad. I mean, reputation doesn't necessarily factor into every single campaign, so this really does depend on the type of campaign and how reliant you are on reputation. But if you are, then these ones are quite good, but you'll notice that all of these, like the diamonds that we just went through, all of these give you reputations. The diamonds gives you tactics cards. That's just how it is. So the 2 of Spades here, we've got Spreading Unrest. The house wants to start an uprising among their enemies' workers and has tasked the gang with spreading seditious propaganda. A fighter in your opponent's deployment zone may make the graffiti double action. Reveal the card at the first time your fighter makes this action. If this is successful, make a note, and at the end of the game, if your gang has completed at least 3 graffiti actions, then it gains D3 reputation, so slightly less than the first one, but easier to do. The 3 of Spades here, Superior Tools. The house has given the gang an experimental weapon for their next battle. Eager to see its effects, at the start of the game, reveal this card and randomly choose one of the fighters in your crew. For this game, increase the strength and damage characteristic of one of their weapons by 1. If your gang wins the game, then the test was a success and your gang gains D3 reputation. This one's slightly different because it does actually give you a little bit of a bonus on your stats for the game as well, so not bad at all, but only D3 reputation there. The 4 of Spades here is Scorched Earth. If the house can't have it, then no one can. Reveal this card at the start of the game. If this is a Zone Mortalis game, destroy at least 3 doors. If this is a Sector Mechanicus game, choose a piece of terrain within 6 inches of the center of the table and wreck it. Count the terrain as having Toughness 8 and Wounds 8. This terrain is automatically hit by attacks due to its large size. Wrecked terrain remains on the table but is considered to have been damaged in some significant way. If your gang is successful, gain D3 reputation. Pretty straightforward, that one. Show of Force, this is the 5 of Spades here. Sometimes winning is not enough, and to really drive home the dominance of a house, its enemies need to be utterly crushed. At the end of the game, if there are at least 5 enemy models out of action, not counting those that have fled the battlefield. Reveal this card and gain D3+1 reputation for your gang. Pretty straightforward, that one as well. Again, relying on you taking guys out. The 6 of spades here, we've got the Stitch Up. Houses routinely frame enemy fighters for crimes in order to bring their rivals into disrepute. Reveal this card at the start of the game. And randomly choose a fighter from your opponent's crew. When one of your fighters is in base contact with that fighter, they can make the plant evidence basic action. If successful, your gang gains D3 reputation. If at the end of the game the enemy fighter has not been seriously injured and taken out of action, your gang gains an additional D3 reputation. Pretty cool, that one. Again, that's probably the most fluffy of the bunch so far. Very cool indeed. Moving on now to the 7 of spades. Dangerous ground here. A particular patch of turf is vital to your house and must be held at all costs. Reveal this card at the start of the game and choose a piece of terrain or game tile anywhere at least 12 inches from your deployment zone. If at the end of the game there are no enemy fighters within 6 inches of the piece of terrain or the chosen game tile, your gang gains D3 reputation. The 8 of spades here, right of way. The house needs a clear passage to move its goods through an area and wants the gang to make a path. Reveal this card at the end of the game. If at least 4 of your fighters are in an enemy's deployment zone, your gang gains D6 reputation. D6 reputation, that's the first time we've got so much here. Quite a lot of rep there, potentially. The 9 of spades here, decapitating strike. Taking out a gang's leadership is the way to put a spud wrench in their plans. Reveal this card when one of your fighters takes an enemy leader or champion out of action. At the end of the game, if your opponent has no leader or champion models on the board, your gang gains another D6 reputation there. We then have meat for the machine. The meat harvesters are always offering good sums for fresh meat and often gather on the levels below a gang fight to gather up the leftovers. Yuck. If the actions of one of your fighters knock an enemy down a pitfall or cause them to fall from a height and be taken out of action, reveal this card and gain D3 reputation. If at the end of the game 3 or more enemies have been knocked down pitfalls or have been taken out of action by falls, your gang gains an additional D3 reputation. So this one's a bit more situational. I mean, you've really got to rely on some pitfalls being in the game, I suppose, and just knocking people off stuff. Now getting into the jack of spades here, contemptuous takedown. A good yarn about a contemptuous takedown is useful propaganda for the house. Reveal this card if one of your fighters takes an enemy fighter out of action with an unarmed attack and gain D3 reputation for your gang. If the enemy fighter was a leader or champion, gain D6 reputation instead. Pretty good, particularly if you've got, I don't know, a brute that doesn't have any weapons maybe. Something like that anyway. Unarmed attacks aren't that common, I suppose. Most people have fighters that are pretty tooled up or at least have a knife or something. But it could be good. We've then got the queen of spades here, Juve Cull. Sounds ominous. Separating the spores from the scum is good for all the houses, plus it keeps the locals in line. Reveal this card if your gang has taken all of the opposing players' Juves out of action. If your opponent has no Juves in their crew, reveal it if you take out of action at least 3 gangers with the lowest credit value. Completing the subplot earns your gang D6 reputation. This is pretty cool. A lot of gangs only have 1 or 2 Juves. Some have many, depending on what kind of gang you're actually running, but not bad. Again, if you're playing against Gene Stealer cults or, I don't know, Venators or something, that they don't have Juves, so it's a bit harder to do, but again, quite an interesting one there. The last one, the King of Spades, is Swift Victory. A quick victory always impresses the House Masters. Reveal this card at the end of the game if you won the scenario with 10 rounds or less, within 10 rounds or less, and gain D6 reputation for your gang. If you won the scenario in 5 rounds or fewer, your gang gains 2d6 reputation. Now, most games certainly don't go to 10 rounds because you'd be there all night playing the game, I imagine. I'd say most games usually finish by 4 or 5 turns, so this is very, very reasonable indeed, should you win the game. And that is the spades there. Moving on to the next one now. Hearts, noble whims. Sometimes the personal whims of house nobles play themselves out through gang warfare, and strange requests will come down from on high. Okay, so with hearts here, noble whims, the first one, the ace of hearts, extreme displeasure. For reasons known only to the noble, one of the enemy fighters has earned their ire. Reveal this card at the start of the game after your opponent has selected their crew, but before deploying any fighters. Your opponent should shuffle their crew deck and randomly select a fighter. If at the end of the game the selected fighter has been taken out of action, add d6 times 10 credits to the gang's stash. If the fighter was taken out of action with a melee weapon or with the coup de grace, then add 2d6 times 10 credits instead. Pretty great. As you can tell, the other two suits that we've already been through, one gave you lots of tactics cards, the second gave you lots of rep, this one gives you lots of cash, so definitely the most preferable one so far, I would say, for most people. Moving on now to the Two of Hearts, we have Noble Nephew. News has arrived that one of the gang's fighters is a distant relation to someone powerful and must be protected. Reveal this card at the start of the game and randomly choose one of your Juves, or if your gang does not contain any Juves, randomly select a ganger instead. If at the end of the game the chosen fighter has not suffered any wounds, you add 10 credits to the gang's stash, and if they have suffered no wounds but managed to inflict at least one wound on an enemy, add d6 times 10 credits instead. After the game it turns out they were not related at all and that it was a clerical error. I really like this one actually. It kind of forces you not to want to just hide them and protect them for the entire game. You kind of want to go out there and get the d6 times 10 credits, if you ask me, and take a wound off someone else. So I would just play the game as normal with this one, and in the hope that you're actually going to take someone out with it. But, you know, it's a decent one, that one. I quite like it. The Three of Hearts now. Lost heirloom. Some vitally important object has been lost by the noble, and they want the gang to recover it for them. The only problem is the noble is not entirely sure where it is. If you're playing a Zone Mortalis game, then the heirloom is in a ductway. If you're playing Sector Mechanicus, then it's in one of the upper levels of a piece of terrain. Any scenery feature roughly 12 inches or less across with a raised area counts. At any point during the game, any of your fighters may make a search double action if they are within 3 inches of a ductway or on the upper levels of a piece of terrain. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters makes this action, and when they do this, roll a d6 on a 5+, or this is the last unsearched ductway or terrain piece. They find the heirloom and gain 2d6 times 10 credits, otherwise it is not in the ductway or terrain piece. Pretty cool, that one as well, just forcing you to do some other stuff in the game. Four of Hearts, a warning. The gang has a message to deliver, and the noble wants to make sure the enemy leader knows just who it's from. During this game, if one of your fighters makes a successful melee attack against an enemy leader, you can reveal this card and choose not to roll to wound for any hits scored, ending the attack without effect, and adding d6 times 10 credits to the gang's stash. If the fighter that made the attack was your leader, add 2d6 times 10 credits instead. This one's really cool, just hunting out their leader. But do you want the XP by taking them out, or would you rather have the money? I guess it really does depend on how you're feeling at that time. Pretty cool, that one. Gives you some nice options. We then got the Five of Hearts there, and this is cruel and unusual. The noble likes to hear the piteous screams of their enemies, and has even sent the gang a Vox recording device for just that purpose. If, at the end of the game, the actions of your fighters caused at least 2 enemy fighters to become broken, reveal this card and add d3 times 10 credits to the gang's stash. If 3 or more enemy fighters were broken, add d6 times 10 credits instead. This one works really well if you have a weird with the Terrify weird power, perhaps. That would be quite easy to pull this one off. But yeah, quite a nice one, that one, revolving around broken fighters. We then have the Six of Hearts, Spira style. Mention of Spiras here gives me goosebumps, really. Just because they were so incredibly broken in N95. Appearance is everything for some noble or some nobles, and the gang has been told that they must wear the colours of a particular house luminary in their coming battle. Reveal this card at the start of the game. For this battle, your gang has been forced to wear garishly bright coats, huge floppy hats, or some invisible but no less ridiculous ostentation like distilled fear cat scent. Your opponent reduces the penalty to hit your fighters by 1. -1 to hit. Impartial cover would give no benefit. If your gang wins the game, though, you get 2d6 times 10 credits. The gang stash, if they win without fighters going out of action, add 3d6 times 10 credits. Pretty cool. Real fluffy narrative one there as well. Would be hilarious if you were, I don't know, a corpse grinder gang and you drew that one. I really like that one. Right then, moving on to the next bunch of hearts here. We have the Seven of Hearts, recovery job. The enemy gang owes someone the noble. Where are we? Sorry, just trying to move this. Yeah, right, there we go. Recovery job. This is the Seven of Hearts. The enemy gang owes someone the noble knows money, and the noble wants the gang to collect. When one of your fighters is in base contact with an enemy fighter, they may make a shakedown basic action. Reveal this card. The first time one of your fighters makes this action and gain D3 times 10 credits. Shakedown actions taken against champions and leaders yield D6 times 10 credits instead. Very cool, but quite hard to do. We then have the Eight of Hearts here, and this is Death from Above. The noble has a dark sense of humour and wants the gang to deliver his retribution from on high. If you take an enemy fighter out of action by having another fighter, either friendly or enemy, fall on them, reveal this card and gain 2d6 times 10 credits. If the enemy fighter was a leader or champion, gain 3d6 times 10 credits. So high risk, high reward there, and very, very hard to pull off. If you can, you have to make someone fall on someone else. It's quite hard to do that, but really, really cool in terms of the rewards. We then have the Nine of Hearts here, a suitable spectacle. The more blood, the better, is often the cry of the House Masters. If an attack made by one of your fighters rolls 3 or more injury dice at once, and at least one of the dice comes up as an out of action, reveal this card and gain d6 times 10 credits. Quite easy to do, really, especially with close combat, I would say. Not bad at all. High damage weapons, etc. Quite an easy one, that one. We then have the Ten of Hearts, no witnesses. Sometimes a quiet kill is just what's required to advance the noble's plans. Reveal this card when you take an enemy fighter out of action. And no enemy model has line of sight to either the enemy fighter or the fighter that took them out. Gain d3 times 10 credits. If your fighter took out the model with a melee weapon, your gang gains d6 times 10 credits. So a nice assassin one there. We then have the Jack of Hearts with Make Some Noise. Some nobles want to set the hive on fire just to watch it burn. Reveal this card at the end of any round when you have fired 5 or more weapons with the Blast, Rapid Fire or Blaze trait without causing any wounds to gain d6 times 10 credits. Pretty cool. It's an interesting one, that one. Most gangs have Blast, Rapid Fire or Blaze in their midst, that's for sure. Now the Queen of Hearts, we have Shadowing. A noble wants the gang to keep an eye on an enemy fighter to see how they fight and just what they're up to. Reveal this card at the start of the game and randomly choose a fighter from your opponent's crew. Any fighter within 12 inches of the chosen fighter may make the shadow double action. A shadowing fighter makes no other action this turn, but if the target moves, it is also moved to remain within 12 inches of them. Unless topped by impassable terrain or enemy models, if at the end of the game you have a fighter shadowing the target, your gang gains d6 reputation. So that's interesting. We now switch to reputation instead of credits there. I'm not sure if that's a misprint. I'm sure it is. It's got to be, right? Because the rest of them are all credits. Anyway, I'll have to work that one out. The last one is the King of Hearts, Work for the Docks. The noble has bought a share of a local Sawbones holding and wants the gang to drum up business. Reveal this card at the end of the game for every fighter, friend or foe that went out of action but did not die. A 66 result on the lasting injury table. Your gang gains d3 times 10 credits. Any fighters who rolled a trip to the docks provide d6 times 10 credits instead. Very cool, and yeah, I think this one's probably the most preferable for most people. If you're drawing cards from the generic subplots, you're probably going to want to hope for hearts most of the time. But we'll have to look into the shadowing one there because it does say reputation instead of credits. Comment down below if you know any different on that one. And let's move on to the last suit now. Clubs. Unforgiving Underhive. Knock-on effects from the great games played by the houses and constant warfare between gangs can change the fortune of a gang even before the first round is fired. Now we're into the last suit. Let's see what we get for this one. And this is Clubs, of course, my favourite suit. First, with the Ace of Clubs, we have Vox Failure. Gangers must often make do with second-rate equipment, whatever the house deigns to give them, and what they can scrounge from Underhive traders. Reveal this card at the start of the game. For the duration of the scenario, your leader's leading by example range is reduced to 6 inches. And any of your fighters out of line of sight of any friendly models, add 1 to their leadership and cool characteristic to a maximum of 12+. If your gang wins the game, every fighter that took part gains D3 experience points in addition to any experience rewards. That's pretty cool. Fighters gaining experience. I personally love experience in this game. I think, it looks like this suit is going to give you experience over anything else, which is pretty cool. So we've had one suit that gives you tactics cards, one suit that gives you rep, one suit that gives you predominantly credits, and the last suit here that gives you XP for everything. Very cool. The next one, the 2 of clubs, is failed assassination. There are few rules when it comes to gang warfare, and some fighters are not above evening the odds before the battle has begun. Reveal this card at the start of the game and randomly select one of the fighters from your crew. For the duration of the game, the fighter must reduce their movement, weapon skill, ballistic skill, and strength by 1. If the fighter survives the game without being seriously injured or taken out of action, they gain D6 experience points in addition to any experience rewards for the scenario. Really cool, but you're going to probably want to hide them around a corner in your deployment zone and hope that you win. Nice one, that one. We have the 3 of clubs next, and that's Wandering Watchman. One of the gang's patrols is in the right place at the right time and has heard the sound of battle. You may reveal this card at the start of any round. Randomly select D3 fighters that are not part of your crew and set them up in your deployment area. These fighters are now part of your crew for this scenario. If you lose the scenario, none of your fighters will gain any experience for the game. Cool twisty-turny one there, but essentially, getting 3 extra fighters in a limited scenario can really give you the upper hand and make you win the game. So that's quite a cool one, that one. I really like that one. We then have the 4 of clubs here, loaded for Sump Spider. Extra ammo rations have reached the gang, and every fighter has pockets full of shells. Bullets and power packs. Reveal this card at the start of the game. For the duration of the scenario, every fighter in your crew may re-roll failed ammo checks. However, all hits on your fighters from ranged weapons deal an extra point of damage. Every fighter in your crew that survives the game without being taken out of action gains D3 experience points in addition to any experience rewards for the scenario. Pretty cool again. However, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of the extra damage, to be honest, especially if it's bolt guns and stuff. Okay, so the 5 of clubs here, we have out of favour. The gang's house has fallen out of favour with the Imperial House, and there is much dissension among the nobles. Lack of strong leadership and news of house gangs getting scragged has everybody on edge. Reveal this card at the start of the game. For the duration of the game, add 2 to the cool characteristic of all of your fighters to a maximum of 12+. If your gang wins the game, each fighter gains an additional D3 experience points in addition to any noted in this scenario. If you win without any fighters going out of action, each fighter gains D6 extra experience points instead. Pretty cool, that one as well. Yeah, why not? We then have House Spies. Your gang's plans have fallen into enemy hands. Reveal this card before either gang has deployed. You must set up before your opponent regardless of the normal rules for the scenario, and your opponent automatically wins the roll for priority in the first turn. Thereafter, your opponent gains +1 on all rolls to determine who has priority. Every fighter in your crew that survives the game without being taken out of action gains D3 experience points in addition to any experience rewards for the scenario. Pretty cool, and these are all fairly harsh, but if you somehow manage to survive, you get lots of XP for them. Alright, so the 7 of clubs now, we have Doppelganger. One of your gangers is not what they seem. Reveal this card the first time one of your gangers, not Jews, leaders or champions, is taken out of action. Instead of removing the model, leave them on the board. Any effects such as being on fire or having run out of ammo are discarded, and they are restored to their starting wounds. They now count as part of the opponent's gang for the remainder of the scenario. If one of your fighters manages to take the imposter out of action, they gain D6 experience points. No lasting injury roll is made for the imposting fighter, as they were never really part of the battle. I really like this one. Super fluffy. Potentially pretty nasty if it's a fighter with, I don't know, a flamer or something crazy like that. However, I really like it. It's really cool, especially if it's a Juve. Not a bad one there at all. And of course, even if they do go out of action, it takes the edge off it by having no lasting injury roll there as well. The 8 of diamonds, the 8 of clubs, a bit of payback. A simmering anger has taken over your gang. Maybe one too many stories of comrades getting scragged or their rivals swanning about in their turf has gotten your fighters riled up. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters successfully completes a coup de grace action to give the fighter an experience point in addition to any experience for taking an enemy out of action. For the remainder of the game, coup de grace actions taken by your fighters will award them an additional experience point, provided that they have not already gained any experience as a result of this card. Very cool again, a bit of payback there. We then have the 9 of clubs, bad day. Every gang boss has their off days. It's just that sometimes it gets people killed. Reveal this card for the first time. Either your leader or your champion activates for the duration of the game. That leader or champion cannot make group activations. If the chosen fighter survives the game without being taken out of action, they gain D3 experience points if they are a champion, or D6 experience points if they're a leader. This is great for me. I don't tend to group activate much. I like to have sort of full action economy. I will obviously do it every now and then, but I usually like to reserve group activations for those times when I really, really need them. But that's a fairly easy one to do, I suppose. We've then got the 10 of clubs, and that's Act of Defiance. If you're going down, you might as well take as many with you as you can. Reveal this card if one of your fighters moves into base contact with 2 or more models to gain D3 experience points for that fighter. If the fighter takes out all enemies in base contact in the same activation that this card is revealed, that fighter gains an additional D3 experience points. Great for a Death Maiden or a Stimmer, I must say. We then move into the Jack of Clubs here, and this is Grim Resolve. Only the hard survive in Necromunda. Reveal this card when one of your fighters rallies from being broken. That fighter gains 1 experience point for the remainder of the battle. Every time one of your fighters rallies from being broken, they will gain an experience point unless they have already gained experience as a result of this card. Pretty cool, but fairly situational there. We then have the Queen of Clubs, Hazard Pay. Overcoming the hazards of the Underhive is often a challenge in itself. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters successfully leaps over the pitfall, survives the fall that inflicts damage, or interacts with a hazard that could damage them and survive. That fighter gains 1 experience point for the remainder of the battle. Every time one of your fighters survives a hazard in these ways, they gain 1 experience point unless they've already gained experience as a result of this card. Pretty cool, but very situational there. And then lastly, we have the King of Clubs, Chemical Solutions. The gang has been hitting the chems a bit hard, making them less likely to feel injuries, but also more reckless. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters suffers a flesh wound. For the duration of the game, your fighters ignore the effects of flesh wounds. Oof! However, when rolling lasting injuries, they must roll twice and accept the higher result. At the end of the game, every fighter in the crew that is still alive gains an additional D3 experience points. Pretty cool, pretty harsh again. So really, that is the universal subplots. I've just given you an overview of them all. One of the suits gives you tactics, one of the suits gives you rep, one of the suits gives you money, and the last one gives you XP there. So that's pretty much the long and short of it. You can use these in your games to add a bit of narrative fluff and flavour. I really, really like them, I'll be honest. Combine this with intrigues and whatnot. Obviously you don't want to use both, but you can. And I'll do a video shortly, I suppose, on the individual house subplots as well. But in the meantime, that's it from me. Please do like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you on the flip side. Peace out.